We're live.
Oh,
Yay.
hello.
Sure. Over here. Yay. It looks like we're live. Awesome, awesome, awesome.
I see
Well,
that too.
welcome
Oh,
everybody to the first ever coffee chat, undefined. I have been so excited to start these chats. They've been chatting to me for a while, asking to be creative. And so here it is. I'm choosing to do it. Bad anyway. And specifically, I just want to say something about that, which will lead into our topic of the day, is when I see people choose things that are, vulnerable, or they're willing to expose themselves, or like do it anyway. I get so inspired by that. I'm like, man, that inspires me way more than like the neat and tidy stuff. So hence the undefined coffee chat.
so do
And
you mean like
if anybody,
I'm not neat and tidy?
right. If anybody knows me at all, which if you've been invited, you know me to some regard, you know that I'm undefined and very, very, very nonlinear. So you wouldn't be here unless you were able to receive that. So anyway, I'm Leah Black, and today we have special guest Yasodhara Romero Fernandes, and she is streaming in live from Belgium. And Yasodhara, can you introduce yourself a little bit? Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah. So actually, I'm not in Belgium right now. I'm in the mountains in Austria.
Cool.
Yeah. So you have to like, for me, it's like, yeah, just go wherever works at the moment. So I'm an Access Consciousness certified facilitator, and Access, as the name says it, is about accessing to consciousness. And so over the past few years, I've been traveling the world, working with a lot of like different people, meeting a lot of different people in that were working on all kind of areas. And basically most of them have been really great at a lot of things, but never actually realized that they're like really different, or they try to fit in and that doesn't work. And so for me, the beauty of this work is it's about empowering people to know that they're not wrong, and to like start to realize like, wow, what if whatever fields we're working in, you know things that no one else know. And so that can be in graphic design, it can be like really like high management, how do you say that, but it's also like doctors or whatever. And it's amazing to see what that creates.
So well said. So well said. Yes, I think with my intro and your intro here, the melding of that can bring us into our topic today, which is what is beyond judgment? What is living beyond judgment?
Wow.
And living instead from allowance. So, do you want a question? Would you like to just riff? Where are you feeling right now?
Well, it's interesting because what is like so I've been like, also before I started doing this, sometimes people ask me like, how did you get here? And I have been a singer for like about 15 years. And if there's one thing that is very relevant to you say that, like in the art world, it's judgment. It's like if you can gain as much positive judgment as possible, then that makes you a great singer, and that gives you this power to move on and to create more. And if you don't, you'll like kind of, it's like this really weird thing that has been, I've been looking a lot at that, but like for years I didn't know what I was looking at, and I was looking for something, and I thought it was through getting better, to gaining more technical skills, that I would reach that. And it always like, it was like this kind of black hole, which was never fillable.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. Yeah. And what has drawn me so much to you, like specifically, is the invitation of non-judgment that you just be. Like, and it's quite an undefined thing. I can't really put a finger on it. And I think, you know, you can recognize things in people that you also have within yourself. So that's like, it's like acknowledging that. But what comes to my mind as well is like, how do you know you're in judgment and when you're like really being a space of allowance? Because to me, the opposite of judgment is like bears down allowance, like space. So to me, judgment like sticks in my body, or like it feels really contracted and crunchy. And I am not a singer, but I can relate to certain, like I grew up dancing, same sort of thing. And I remember like always kind of like feeling contracted in my body. And that's just my experience. So I'm wondering if that's like, if it's different for you, or, you know, it could be different for anyone. So don't take my word for it. That's just like been my experience with judgment in my body, that I can like actually recognize it as like, ding, ding, ding. Oh, I'm in judgment right now. Cause like, it's kind of like, even like the stress, like will go into my neck or like my shoulders. It's like, oh, if I was really being an allowance and not judging me for the way I function, or judging this other person, you know, like when you put judgment on yourself, it can still feel very, very crunchy. So that's kind of like the indicator for me in my body. Do you have anything to say about that? Like, how do you know you're in judgment, and how do you get it?
Well, it's very interesting. I just finished like a class, the Symphony of Possibilities, with the founder of Access staying here. And it was really interesting because we had a lot of conversations about judgment. And one of the things was that I realized once again, like getting out of judgment doesn't mean that there is no more judgment. What if getting out of judgment is also like really just when you judge yourself or when you judge someone else, to just like at least be present with that and just be like, oh, I'm judging. And so it was so interesting to see over the 4 days. And now I've been like doing some processing, like, you know, you sometimes get some clearings that you can do in a class or questions you can ask. So I've been asking them every day over and over again. And it was really interesting to start seeing how much we have sometimes this hidden judgments that are, again, like, you know, the thing with judgment for me is that it's as if you put blinders on. And yeah, it says, I just bought a horse, and it's really interesting to actually train her, because whatever we have learned to do as a human, like, so judging and then making positive judgment better than negative judgment and forcing and all this kind of things, it just doesn't work with her. It's like with her, she's like this thermometer of like when I go into judgments, when I go out of somewhere, when I'm with my head somewhere else, like she's just like, okay, I'm gonna eat grass. And it's amazing because she will just walk away. And then the minute I'm present again, she's like back. And so for the last 2 days, it has been like, wow, this training boot camp to start looking at, okay, so what is beyond human reality? What is beyond everything that we have been making real and true? That doesn't work for our bodies.
Yeah. And what I'm hearing you say, which is kind of like this aha, like, oh, this makes sense to me, is like presence is the solution to getting out of judgment in a certain way, right?
Yeah. And that's one of the things that really struck me the first time I got into knowing Access Consciousness. I took a bars class, and like in the first phrases in that manual where you learned that thing called the bars, it says like, consciousness includes everything and judges nothing. And I think it has taken me like 5 years before I started actually getting that. Like, wow, it's really about not excluding anything that you do, not excluding anything that you are, not judging any part of that. Because only when you have that, and it's almost like Buddhism, right? You know, like how people will, like the thing of meditation, where you'll just sit and you let all these thoughts come up, and you let everything come up, and you let whatever is there, you'll just like, the more you strengthen yourself to be present with that, and not like, the less it will start to take over who you are.
Yeah. And I just got like in a different way too. Like I can head trip like on the past or the future, and presence is like the opposite of that. So I wonder if judgment can even exist if you're really willing to be aware and present in the moment. And that's like blowing my mind right now.
Right. Like it's interesting also because like, you know, what if you could, because like a lot of like I've never really liked meditation because I don't have the patience for it. And so something for me to be focused in the now was like a little like, oh, how do I do that? Like it was as if I was like contracting me. And so one of the things that I've been working a lot also, because I've been teaching a lot and working in schools and stuff with children, was to get them to actually expand. And so to expand their space. And one of the amazing things with that was like, wow, most people become like way more present when they actually allow themselves to expand. But then also like you can have the awareness of future and past, but you don't have to move in there. I don't know if you're still here. Seems like your internet is a little breaking up. So let me just see if you come back. Meanwhile, I'll just keep talking. So that's the thing with like being in the present. Often we kind of have learned that, oh, I need to be here, I need to be focused, I need to be contracted. But what if it's actually more about, hey, what if you could start being here and expand your energy and still have past and future in your awareness? She's frozen. I know. So what do we do now? Let's see. Oh, there she goes. Let's see if she comes back or not. Otherwise, we're going to stop. When your friend leaves while having coffee. Let's see if she's coming back. Oh, she's trying to come back. Okay, awesome. So it's interesting when you start. Okay, yes, I can keep talking. That's awesome. So that can be like really a cool way to start looking at things, is to see like, okay, so when I'm in my own life, from which space do I function? Do I function from the space of expansion? Is that a way of being present for me? Or is being present more sometimes like this trial and error to be frantically in one place? And is that also, for me, what that was creating with meditation oftentimes was that it was getting worse. Like I could not find peace in that. My mind would go crazy more and more and more and more and more. And then when this expansion thing came in, it was like, oh, but this is easier because I don't have to shut anything out. There you are.
I missed a bit. What's right about that?
You were just like, we're talking about presence. I'm going.
I'm out. I gotta go somewhere else. So where are we?
Well, I just talked about like the expansion, like that might be an interesting part to actually start looking at where you functioned from. For example, also when you're in meetings with people, like when you're working with people, what I've noticed a lot is that I have tendency to contract and to see like, okay, so how do I deal with this person? What can they receive? What can they? But there's like this rather than just being like, wow, I'm just going to be everything I am and then see what we can create together.
Create together. Yes. Yes. I got to create a better internet situation, I think.
Yeah, and it's interesting, right? How we do that. And so what I've learned also for my horse in the last few weeks is if I do that, like, and I try to go into her world, it's so small that she will get frantic and she will panic. And she will be like, what are we doing? What are we doing? What are we doing? Because I'm not like, boom. And then I asked her to show me, what do you require? And she required me to be aware of all the Alps here. And I was like, ooh, that's different.
All the Alps?
Yes. Like it's like this huge area. And so this is also like, for example, when you have children or when you work with people, what do they require of you to be aware of? And so if you have, for example, like, children that have been diagnosed or that kind of thing, or you work with people that are diagnosed, they will often like be aware of things that are not in your visibility. So you'll have to, like, this afternoon I went walking with my horse and like she was like constantly aware when somebody was walking like still 5 minutes away, and I was like, whoa, what's that? And then I was looking around, I was like, oh, really?
And we can have that sort of awareness as well, you know? like the horse, these beings, these animals haven't been inundated by like having a mind, really, where that can get in the way. But if you're willing to, say bye-bye to to the computation or figuring it out, really, I think the more I do that, the more I tap into that spherical awareness that you're talking about. I think with your horse is that it's like aware of everything, even like that far away, and that's a superpower. That is a capacity. It's way more fun than getting in the loops of the mind and whatnot. I wrote down some questions. Should I dig in?
Let's go. Yes.
Cool. Ooh, let's talk about, shall we, receiving judgment without being at the effect of it.
Ooh, yes.
Is it possible?
It totally is. Which doesn't mean that it's not sometimes going to be very intense, right? If you are in a room with judgmental people, that might give you a very different night than when you're just with people that don't do that. So that's also sometimes, what I sometimes see is that we look at, okay, like we have decided what should be easy. And so we kind of start judging when things are intense as like, oh, I'm not dealing with this well, or I don't like it. Where sometimes it's just like, well, it's maybe not that easy to be here. So how well are you doing?
Yeah, and being willing to receive the intensity, like make it more general and for me, I think I identified everything I was aware of as me. So something would be like I would walk into a group of people and be like totally different than my normal self, like when I'm alone. And I would think like, I am so wrong. I am so weird. Like, why do I have all these judgments all of a sudden? But I'm really just picking up on their judgments, and like, and their intensities. And I'm feeling that in my body. But for me, like, being able to make it general and say, okay, I'm perceiving an energy, and it's not me. I'm like the antenna that is like receiving that energy or experiencing that energy, but that who I am. And as soon as I can, like, that's also a version of like barriers down, expanding out.
Yeah, so maybe we can talk a bit about barriers as well. I'm actually right now, it's cool. I'm in a 7-day challenge with a lot of people for a seminar, a class that I give, which is Right Voice for You, which is about allowing yourself to be you wherever you are and to just be present with everything that is. And what I've seen a lot of people on stage do, it doesn't matter if they're like speakers or if they're singing or doing whatever they're doing on stage, is that they will be extremely aware of their audience, but they will not acknowledge that. And I have to say, for the 15 years that I was on stage, I had no idea that I could just stand there and hear everybody think and just be aware of that. And that had nothing to do with me. And so one of the ways that I work a lot with people is about teaching them to actually starting to see, okay, so do I have barriers up? And so barriers are these energetic things, walls we put around us to often protect, or because we have learned that that's the way to be. And so sometimes, when you're very relaxed with someone, it seems as if, oh, there's really no barriers. I can just relax and I'm me. And then sometimes you'll be in front of people that are there to prove it to me, or they want to judge you. And then you can feel this tightness come up. Maybe you'll feel it in your body, or it feels as if you have this wall in between you and your audience. And so you can bring those down. You can actually choose to push those barriers down, even if they're energetic and you don't see them. It's very interesting. I've done it with a lot of singers as well. And it changes everything. It also changes the audience.
Yeah. And when I hear you there, I think of like being willing to not be at the effect of other people, and really being willing to step into that dominant energy. Like, are you willing to dominate the space? It doesn't have to be loud. It doesn't have to be, but like energetically, like on an energetic level, are you willing to dominate the space and dominate, your own space? Yeah. And then that change, like, like a teacher that, like, yeah, the more you're willing to receive, the more you can dominate the space too, right?
Yeah, and
So
it's interesting because like we have a lot of sometimes definitions about domination, what that means, and that it means something towards someone else or towards an audience. But what if, like, for example, with these two, like bringing your barriers down, it will often change the entire room and people will not really know what's going on, but suddenly they will either stop judging, or what will also sometimes happen is that the judgments will get directed back at them and it's so uncomfortable that they will stop it. And it's incredible. One day I was working in a regular school where they prepared artists to go to the conservatory and theater school, and I was there was like an exam, and so I was examining like kids that came in and then sing, and they came in and they sing, and at one point there is this girl coming in, and she starts singing, and I was literally like, "What is happening?" I had to actually be there and judge her and give her points, and there was just like nothing. And it took me like, because she was there for like 15 minutes for her exam. And like after she was done, she left, and I was like, what was that? And only after I asked that question, I was like, she is like without any barrier. She's just there, take it or leave it. And she was so vulnerable that the moment she left, I was just in tears. Like, wow, there was nothing to prove. It was just like, hey, this is me.
right.
And that was, I was like,
Yeah.
not judging herself. She wasn't trying to show what she could or what she was really like, just showing up and whatever it would be. But it was so different also, like, when you're in the position of like the judger, it's like, what do I do now? Like, oh, like, how do we even like, And that started also for me putting like a thing that I've been working on, conscious teachership, in place, which kind of is like an invitation to re-examine if you would teach from a conscious space and place, like how are all the concepts that we, for example, have in teaching and education not working, and what can we have as a different reality in that? I don't know if you're frozen again. Oh my God. Oh,
I totally am. I'm back. Yeah, brilliant. And what I'm aware of there too is like, if you're willing to truly drop, proving you're not at the effect of any judgment, right?
Yeah.
Like that. Yeah.
And
But
that's the magic
of yourself. Yeah. For that.
Yeah. And that's the magic of these tools. Like, so the Access Consciousness tools, it's very pragmatic, actually, when you start putting them into action. It's very quick. It doesn't take time any longer to change things. You can just like observe something, be like, wow, this isn't working. This is too intense. Okay, you know what? I'm just going to lower my barriers right now. I'm just going to do it. I don't need to know how I do this. This is not an examination on, am I already doing it right? Am I not doing it right? I'm just going to start to do it and see what is changing in my marriage, in my business, in every conversation I have, even the one when I send messages.
Mm-hmm.
It's amazing, I would say.
Well, yeah, and it doesn't take any time. As soon as you become aware of something, you can change it immediately. Like, whereas, it used to take years to unravel something, to choose something else. And yeah, if you're willing to be undefined, use some tools, like it can really be speed of space. Like, as soon as you really make another choice, which is really phenomenal. Do you have do you have anything else right now? I feel like it's such a good, like, yummy bite into this topic,
Yes,
and it's,
I love
it's
it.
been in my mind. So,
Thank you so
so
much.
I would like, yes, thank you so much. And I would like to let everybody know that you have a class coming up too, right?
I got a lot coming up. Yes.
But and the topic of X-Men is like, to me, is like the non-judgment, like undefined, like it's that all of that. So you've got X-Men classes coming up, right?
I got a lot of those coming up. Yeah. So I work a lot with people that are just different, and it's amazing because I kind of did it, and then I was like, okay, what will it create if I'm actually going to specialize also working with these classes? Because I like usually I work more with bodies and with voices, and so now there were so many people showing up that were actually having a hard time to deal with other people, to deal with their awareness, that the bodies were exhausted and they couldn't change it. Like even doctors can sometimes not change it. Because like if there's nothing wrong, but it's a capacity that you have not learned to work with, it becomes complicated for a body if we keep the point of view like something is wrong. And so what I think is extremely amazing about these classes coming up, X-Men, is that it's about starting to acknowledge like even how different things show up sometimes, that there are very often like hidden capacities of our bodies and of us that there is no reference frame for on the planet. And yeah, I'm really curious what these classes are going to create, and it's time. It's time for us to start stepping into the acknowledgement of what we actually can do and step beyond where we have been making ourselves perfect or right, or this is the image I have created of me and it's really good or it's really bad. It's like, what if that didn't matter at all? Who cares? Who cares?
And what freedom lies beyond that? Like, I think that's what we're all maybe after anyway.
Yeah,
But
right? Yeah.
we can link your page in your in the chat or in the comments. We'll get you connected to anybody to connect with you. And you're such a gift to the planet and to my life. And I'm so glad that you were willing to hop on. And I just adore you. So thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And thanks everybody for watching. There were some people here online.
Yay. Yes. And thank you everybody live. Yes. Okay. Bye-bye.